Mariupol, of course, this is this coastal city that's been under attack. The Russians say it's theirs right now and want Mariupol to essentially surrender. Ukraine has rejected that ultimatum to surrender. The read from my colleague and friend Jack Keane on all of this. General, what do you make of this? Their stance is, the Ukrainian stance is, no, we will not surrender. But they could be in for clearly civilian targeted attacks as a result. What do you make of all this?
Well, I absolutely think that's the right answer, and you certainly have to respect the resolve that they have, given the suffering that's taking place. This is the Russian way of war, certainly, to impose true hardship and devastation on a civilian population to get their capitulation. And certainly Ukrainians are determined not to do that. And incident to that, though, is that we have to continue to help them quite dramatically. This is going to grind on. The Russians have failed to accomplish their major objective, to topple Kyiv and the government as well. And where we are now is their ground campaign in the northern sector is halted, and they're actually putting in defensive positions. So that means they're going to grind this out over time, and they've having some success at Mariupol, as you mentioned, to build the land bridge from eastern Ukraine to Crimea. But nonetheless, the challenges ahead for the United States and NATO is to make certain that we continue to give all the resources that we can to the Ukrainians, because this will likely go on for weeks and possibly months. And the keys to the Ukrainian success, in addition to their will and resolve, are the arms and munitions that we're giving them, Neil. The air defense systems, both long range and short range, and all the ground anti-tank systems, which has brought Russia's ground assault in the north to a halt. And they're now relying on the air campaign, and that's why the air defense systems, we have to get in there to thwart that air campaign as much as possible. We got to look for sustaining Ukrainians' effort here so they can actually win at what they're doing and drive the Russians out, impose so much cost on the Russians that another alternative is not acceptable, despite the fact that President Zelensky is seeking certainly some kind of off-ramp in discussions with Putin. I doubt Putin is going to entertain any of those negotiations, at least in the near term.
As you know, General, our reluctance, that is, as a country, and I'm speaking collectively about NATO, providing air support for Ukraine would invite World War III. But given the difficulty that Putin has had, in this war, and the fact that he's had a devil of a time just taking Ukraine, who's to say that he would automatically even be able to expand this war beyond Ukraine?
Well, I think your point's well taken. I know President Zelensky mentioned that it's possible if negotiations don't succeed. But the reality is there's been so much cost already imposed on Russia's military that it would be fanciful to think that they would be able to attack a NATO country and withstand the response where they're going to be outgunned 4 and 5 to 1 and 15,000 fighters versus their 5,000 fighters while they're bogged down fighting the Ukrainians. I don't think that's realistic at all. Well, the best way to prevent any Russian expansion is to do exactly what the Ukrainians are doing right now, and that is impose this severe cost on the Russians' military, impose what the EU and the United States is doing in terms of economic cost, and also a war criminal who's committing war crimes. That will have less impact on Putin, but the economic and the military impact certainly will, and that's what will prevent any expansion by Russia at the termination of this conflict. If they were able to take Ukraine very quickly, was what they thought, with minimum amount of casualties, declare victory after a few days, certainly he would be incentivized to move again, maybe not immediately, but to move again, likely on Moldova and possibly on a Baltic nation, given the wind was at his back. But that's not where we are. He came into this believing the West is weak and in decline, much like President Xi believes, and that due to our political and social divisions, this was a good opportunity to try to take advantage of the West. The Ukrainians backfired on them, and certainly the resolve that NATO has shown and the unity that they have displaying, and the EU and the United States willingness to get tough sanctions on the table, and hopefully there's more that they can do, truly has made a difference here. And it's indisputable. And so the idea of an expansion into World War III as a result of what has happened in Ukraine doesn't seem likely at all.